Good evening, Kevin. Always good to be with you.
As I just said, this decolonising of the Bard's plays, and of all places, the Globe Theatre, reconstructed in Shakespeare's honour, where they put on his plays, they're going through his plays to decolonise them. Should we nip down to the Globe Theatre right now, Sam, and tell the idiots involved in this project that we didn't have any colonies when Shakespeare was writing his plays? So it's going to be kind of hard to decolonise them, isn't it?
Well, that's the first ridiculous thing about this all. Shakespeare died in 1611. The British Empire didn't exist till 1707. They're out by no fewer than 90 years. And it's worth saying that the people involved here are trying so hard to be woke. They're trying so hard to belong that they've lost all sense of reality. They're much like those people in a previous age at Shakespeare who tried to turn Romeo and Juliet into a modern day gangster tale, or try to make their own cultural or relevant version. They're trying nonsense. They're trying too hard, and actually, what they lose sense of is that the people who go to see Shakespeare at the Globe Theatre aren't, arts enthusiasts. They're not people who are there all the time or trying or necessarily massive theatre buffs. They're ordinary people. They're the sorts of people who live in the Red Wall, who've come down to London for the day, who would like to see a traditional English play from the greatest playwright to ever live. Now, if people on the committee think they're better than the greatest playwright to ever live, then good luck to them. My view is they're not. And I would say to those people at the Globe Theatre, they've got a choice. And the choice is this: it's to be woke or not to go broke, right? It's to be or not to be. It's to be woke or not to be broke.
Yeah, as you say, the arrogance of these lame brains saying, "Oh, give us a King Lear. We need to knock this play into shape." The arrogance of the suggestion that these half-wits can improve Shakespeare's plays. But what we're really talking about, Sam, apart from a kind of cancellation of the truth of the play, is censoring. They want to censor the Bard's plays.
That's right. And you got to question who they're doing it on behalf of. I mean, some of your viewers online might be able to see, I'm in a cab. I'm in a cab with a Polish taxi driver called Sebastian. And I said to Sebastian, he's from Poland. He's only moved to the UK relatively recently. I said, "What do you think about this?" He just laughed at me. There is absolutely no sense that somebody like Sebastian, a proud immigrant to this country, wants anything to do with Shakespeare being amended, Shakespeare being meddled with, Shakespeare being fiddled with, in an attempt to bowdlerize racism that he simply doesn't exist. He said
Uh,
he'd ask his daughter because he thought that schools are pushing this sort of stuff onto kids these days. But the idea that anybody other than the woke Islington class have got any issue with Shakespeare, the greatest playwright, the greatest traditional English plays to have ever been written, uh, is frankly madness.
the 1595 comedy, A Midsummer Night's Dream, opens with Theseus saying, "Now, fair Hippolyta, our nuptial hour draws on apace." Shakespeare's in trouble on that one for using the word fair.
Well, look, it's plainly ridiculous. So, many of the people running this board are just sort of what you would call ardent Corbynistas. You can sort of imagine them saying during the midst of their committee meetings, O Jezza, wherefore art thou, Art Jezza?" Right? These people are pining hard for a country that simply speaking the British people rejected, and this all underlines a broader problem that the British people time and time again rejects this kind of hard left vision of the country that portrays everything as a racial matter, that portrays everything as a political matter. And when they can't win at the ballot box, what they do instead is they take control of these cultural important institutions like the Globe, which, as I say, many people go to, and they attempt to impose their values for where the country should be through these quiet committees instead.
So,
And what I can say is it's only glad that places like Talk Radio pick up on it instead, and nowadays they can't get away with it.
I mean, as I said earlier, it's absolutely asinine and moronic. But you feel that these people, they're from the liberal left, they can't win elections through the prism of useless labour. So they're attempting some kind of cultural takeover of this country through this crazy madness of wokery.
I'd put it no lower than this. I'd put it exactly this highly. It's a cultural coup. These people cannot win by the ballot box. So instead, they take over the TV. They won. Well, many of your listeners will know what the BBC is like. They take over our theatres. They take over our galleries. They take over our cultural space. They take over our social networks. And rather than win the argument, they shut down the views of good, ordinary listeners to the likes of talk radio. And they instead portray this ridiculous woke propaganda, and normally I can almost accept it, but when they're fiddling with Shakespeare, the greatest, the high point of English literature, it just begins to become plain offensive.
It is offensive and somewhat sinister. Scholars, Shakespearean scholars, have pointed out that the use of light and dark, cannot be applied to race. It's not to do. The bard doesn't talk of light and dark because of race. It's about, the light is traditionally the better place to be than the dark. Do you see what I mean?
Light and darkness goes back to the Bible. It goes back to Plato. It goes back to Egyptian artworks. Now, look, you can only imagine what would happen if the woke brigade got in charge of the pyramids in Egypt, and they said, "Oh well, I don't think it's right for Ra, the god of Egypt, to be the god of sun. Well, that's the god of whiteness. That's the god of light. Well, I'm afraid we're going to have to get rid of him. We're going to have to replace him with a different god instead." There are some of them that are just prepared to jump at anything, and we've seen this week. It's not the only story. The Tate Britain Gallery. They've got a great restaurant downstairs in the basement. It's called the Rex.
Gotta hurry, yes, Sam. Go on. Quick.
It was painted in 1905. It's got a couple of pictures of slaves that they painted to show just how immoral society could be. Today, it's not even acceptable to show how immoral that society could be.
It's just going too fast, Sam. But listen, great line we had to you in the back of the taxi. Good to talk to you as always. Thank you so much for your time.